Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we have another 2020 Collecta figure to take a look at, and it is also actually another deluxe figure, and you could probably tell already, of course, by the title of the video, the thumbnail, and all that fun stuff, but just by looking at the figure in front of you, this is the Collecta 2020 Saltriovenator, and it is an absolutely incredible looking figure. Initially, when I had seen the prototype images of this figure, I wasn't super sold on the figure just due to the paint job. I didn't think the paint job actually looked all that great in comparison to what I'm used to from Collecta, but I will say actually having the figure here in person, in hand, it is actually really nice looking and much better than I was expecting it to be. I mean, the sculpt is incredible looking for sure, but the paint job itself, which was the one downside that I really took away from the figure in my initial thoughts, is definitely a really nice paint job in person as well, and definitely translated really nicely to the actual factory released version, and I am a bigger fan of it now that I see it here in person than I was initially. But again, an absolutely beautiful looking figure of a very obscure species that I have never seen actually get a figure before, which is something I often get to say about Collecta. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at it right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Saltriovenator, you can see how incredibly well done the head sculpt is straight away. I am very, very impressed with the scale detail here on the head sculpt of this Saltriovenator, and that's the very first thing that I kind of noticed when I pulled it out of the box, was just how incredibly well done all the scales are up here on the face. There are just so many different variations and sizes of scales, and it honestly looks incredible the way it's sculpted out. Beautiful head shape. The entire head shape is really nicely done, but the scales on the face are just off the charts as far as I'm concerned, and that very nice grayish color that they've given to the dinosaur really allows you to see how beautiful those scales are, as does the green coloration that's included here as well. You can see how incredibly nice the scales there are in the eye socket as well. Super tiny, very fine scaling. The eye is painted with a black coloration and given a really nice gloss, so as usual, it looks like a real animal's eye right there. You can see that the crests up here on the head of the dinosaur are painted with like an orangish color, which allows them to look extremely flashy and really stand out to you right there with that orange coloration, especially in comparison to the rest of the body. That's a very flashy and bright area of the dinosaur, but in general, the entire color scheme is kind of brighter and a little bit flashy as far as I'm concerned. You can also see that the nostrils are sculpted out really beautifully up there on the snout, as well as the ears sculpted out back here, and the ear is actually defined with like a little bit of a darker coloration, like a black kind of around the ear, just to make sure that you take note of it. The jaw is articulated, so you can open and close the mouth quite nicely. Once you actually open the mouth, it only opens that far, or at least mine does, so you can't open it super wide. We can't really get in there to see just how nice it is, aside from this little glance in there. It's painted with like a purplish coloration. The tongue actually looks really nice, very beautifully textured tongue in there. You can also see the skin flap there on the side of the mouth. Definitely sports some really, really nice detailing to it. The teeth all appear to be painted quite nicely, honestly. You can see in there some of the teeth are even painted and sculpted individually, which look really, really good. As far as the inside of the mouth goes, you can see the skin flap over here on the inside of the mouth on this side now as well. But definitely a very nice look for the inside of the mouth of the Saltriovenator. Once we start to lead down the neck, you can see lots of really nice wrinkling and creasing in the skin going on, kind of some skin folds and everything, due to the dinosaur having its head turned to the right quite nicely, and you can see how the skin is reacting to that movement being shown there in the sculpt. Definitely very nicely done. You also have some very nice scaling here on the underside of the throat of our Saltriovenator, some beautiful sculpt work there. As we lead down into the body, you can now see the shoulder blade a little bit, kind of poking up right there, but it's not too visible. You can see that the arm sculpt looks really quite nice. We have that continuation of the nice grays and greens as we move down into the arm, but it transitions to a little bit of a darker gray here on the hands, and then we have a nice gray for the nails, which the nails on both hands appear to be painted quite nicely. Moving back here into the body, again, the scales look incredibly nice the entire way through, and you can again see how they're like smaller scales and then they get to larger scales right there. Really cool looking for sure. Really nice kind of skin folding and skin bunching up there in this area because both limbs are pushing back into the body a little bit. So it would be doing that to the skin right there. Beautiful thigh. Again, some really nice muscle definition in both the thigh and the calf actually. And you can again continue to see how nice that scale detail continues to look as we move down the body. Beautiful foot sculpt down here, very bird-like. I think it looks extremely bird-like the way they have kind of like the toes spread apart. Looks really, really nice. Nicely painted nails again with a gray, a darker gray, just like we saw in the hands. And the dew claws are painted on both feet. And you can actually see that the green kind of runs all the way down almost onto the feet as well. And then we move back up here into the body. We continue to see that beautiful scale work on the underside and the upper side of the dinosaur. We have like a creamy color down here, but you can really see how nice it looks in both areas. And then we lead out the length of the tail. The tail does have a pretty nice curve to it. And I actually really like the positioning of the body in general. It almost gives me the feeling like it's jumping up to maybe bite a pterosaur or something that just kind of irritated it and flew by its face. Something like that kind of is like the feeling I get when it comes to the sculpting and the positioning of the body. But the tail looks really nice and it's actually quite stiff. Once you have this first bend, it gets very stiff and straight the entire way out the rest of the tail. Now on the opposing side of the dinosaur, you don't see those skin folds anymore over here. You don't see that skin kind of bunching up, because on this side we do have the skin stretching as this dinosaur again is turning its head to the right, so would be pulling the skin, and that's really nice attention to detail on the part of Collecta. As you move down into the body, once again the arm sculpt looks really nice. You can see the skin kind of reacting to the movement of the arm. The arms are almost in the same positioning, just ever so slightly different, so there's not really too much difference here on this side, aside from the fact that now this leg is pulled back a lot further than what we saw over there, so now we can see more of the actual stomach region. You can see now the skin kind of stretching off of the body as opposed to being bunched up, and you can really get a good idea of how beautiful the stomach detail is and the skin texturing and everything over here on this side, because now the dinosaur again has this whole area kind of out and open for us to see, and it really shows off just how beautiful it looks overall. You can actually almost see a little bit of a pudge to the dinosaur as well. It's definitely thin, but you can see some girth here in the stomach region, so it looks like it actually might have just recently had a meal or something, because like right here in this vicinity you can see kind of a little bulge, so it sort of looks like it recently had fed or something along those lines. And then we come back up here into the leg. You can see that the thigh looks very nice on this side, just like it did on the previous side. Nice bending here in the knee, and then we run out into this very bird-like foot again here. Very, very nice looking. I actually really like the foot sculpt of the Saltriovenator. Definitely very beautifully done and very bird-like I had stated quite a few times. And then we lead out the length of the tail. Again, we have that nice curve to it, and then a very stiff, straight point to the tail right there. And you can see it sports some really nice ridges that run along the spinal column. They start right here on the top of the head, and they get pretty big here in the neck region, but then they get very small here along the back. But then right about here, we start to get a little bigger, and then they get a little smaller again. So there's quite a bit of variation as far as the sizes go, and I think that also looks really, really cool on the figure. Definitely a nice choice, and it's much more refreshing than just having them all run the entire length of the back and all be the same size. So it just gives it some variation in the sculpt, and overall I think this is an absolutely incredible release from Collecta. Definitely one of the best of this year. As far as a size goes on our Saltriovenator, from the tail to the head, you are looking at about 11¼ inches, actually almost close to like 11½ inches, or about 29 centimeters. And then for a height, the highest point is definitely going to be the head, as it's kind of in an upward position. You are looking at about 5½ inches, or around 14 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon, who you almost can't even notice back there because he's just kind of creeping behind our Saltriovenator. But next to these figures, you can definitely see that as far as theropod figures go, it's definitely a big one here from Collecta. It's really got some pretty decent size there next to the Papo Rex, who is a very nicely sized figure himself. So hopefully next to these guys, you'll have a good idea that as far as the 2020 figures go, this Saltriovenator is definitely one of the biggest from Collecta. So this 2020 Saltriovenator from Collecta is an absolutely gorgeous looking figure, and I almost want to get another one just to repaint and give it a little bit more of like a realistic, detailed type of a paint job. In fact, even just a wash. I think a really nice dark wash with how beautiful the scales are on this figure would have really brought the detail out in incredible fashion. And I think that is probably the only thing, honestly, that the figure is missing. Would have been a very nice dark wash. It would have, I think, amped the paint job up in a very realistic fashion had they given it a dark wash. But even without the dark wash, it does still look really beautiful. And like I had stated earlier in the review, initially I wasn't super sold on this paint scheme with like the lighter green and the lighter gray and the entire body kind of having that lighter coloration, because more often than not with my theropods, I usually like to have them darker colors because I feel like being a dinosaur that's going to have to ambush prey and kind of hide in the bushes and stuff and really wait for its perfect time to attack and grab its next meal, you would expect it to not be a super bright coloration where it's going to stick out kind of like a sore thumb. You would expect it to be a darker coloration so it can hide and, again, ambush prey without them noticing it being there. But this paint job actually does look really good on the figure and somehow finds a way to look very natural, and that's something that I was really surprised with once I actually got the figure out of the box and took a look at it. I was definitely impressed overall with how good the actual paint job looks in person. Again, if it had been given a dark wash, I feel like it would have actually looked super realistic and the paint scheme would have looked even more natural on it, but given the paint scheme that it does have currently, it still looks actually really quite nice, and pretty much every color on it I think is very appealing, and it's all very nicely and naturally applied. Nothing looks like paint on a figure, so as far as the paint work goes, this is definitely a very nicely done figure from Collecta. The sculpt is pretty much just off the charts. The sculpt is clearly my favorite part of this figure, as I had stated at the beginning of the closer look with that head sculpt. It's just unbelievable how nice that scale detail is up on the head sculpt, but it's not just limited to the head sculpt in the face area of the Saltriovenator. That beautiful scale detail continues all throughout the entire body of the dinosaur, and actually I think the positioning of the body is actually really nicely done as well, with the dinosaur kind of like facing in an upward fashion. Like I had stated, I feel like it's sort of maybe like lunging after a pterosaur or something, and that could be a really cool diorama someone could create with this figure, or a really cool way to kind of display it on your shelf is maybe chasing after a pterosaur. Just the entire positioning of the body really gives me that feeling that that's what this Saltriovenator is doing. But again, the sculpt, as far as like the minute and fine details, off the charts beautiful, and even the positioning of the body is just off the charts beautiful. There is literally nothing about this figure, I think, that I can say I don't like. An absolutely beautiful, beautiful release from Collecta for the 2020 year. So if you would like to pick this up, I will include a link in the description to where you can do just that, so make sure you head down to the description. I'll probably have a link to Minizoo because I don't believe this is available on everything Dinosaur quite yet, but it definitely will be soon. So if you prefer to order it from everything Dinosaur, just wait a little bit, as I'm sure it's going to be in stock extremely soon. But otherwise, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.